Is Linux becoming a safe space? Is cancel culture going to overwhelm Linux? That's what we're discussing today. Hey everyone, what's happening? We're going to be talking about Kubecon and the events that have happened surrounding it. However, before we dive into this topic, I'm going to give the new people a chance to subscribe if they wish, and ring that bell if they wish to be notified of my newest videos. So for those who are not aware of the event that surrounded Kubecon this week, well, I'm going to go ahead and quickly run through it. A developer named Charles Wood has been banned from attending Kubecon because he posted a tweet. And let's take a look at this tweet right here. As you can see, he posted a tweet of him wearing a MAGA hat in front of Trump Tower. Now, as you can see, he didn't tag Kubecon in it. He didn't mention the Linux Foundation. He didn't tag anybody in this post. This was just a post on his personal Twitter. He's not wearing Linux Foundation gear, whatever. He was a private person on his own time, visiting New York City, standing in front of Trump Tower. That's literally what he did. Now we're going to go ahead and jump to a news article, and I'm going to show you the news article that we're going to cover and exactly what transpired. So right now I am referencing an article from Reclaim the Net. Cancel culture taints the Linux Foundation. Developer publicly disinvited from event over political opinions. Now, we went over the tweet, which is basically the first part of the article, so we're just going to skip over that. I will link the article in the description. We're going to go over what happened on Twitter. And, of course, he posted that tweet. And he got a response from Kim Creighton. Apparently, it's been a couple, but we'll go over that. And I only say her name because it's right here on the article right here. At Kubecon, organizers. I'm beyond disappointed to learn that after the past 2 weeks of community engagement with CMaxW, that's Charles Wood's Twitter handle, you haven't made the decision to discontinue your association with him. This is what I mean when I say 1 to 2 degrees of separation can cause harm. Hashtag cause a scene. Now, I want you to take a look at this. Hashtag cause a scene right there. It's like she's trying to cause trouble or something. But I digress. But 1 to 2 degrees of separation can cause harm? This tells me that this isn't really a Linux user at all, or hasn't spent much time in the Linux community or on any Linux forums or something, because we disagree and separate on many things. I mean, we have many Linux distributions, etc. We disagree on just about everything. No one really agrees 100% about how Linux is supposed to be. So, I mean, this tells me that this is someone who hasn't been in the Linux community very long, or even at all. But, alright, but we're going to continue. But, of course, his offense: a request for an open and civil phone call and a picture of Mr. Wood wearing a MAGA hat, etc. Okay, here's his response to that. At Kim Creighton 1 and friends, would you be willing to have an open call and talk? I'm happy to record it and post it with no edits. I can probably also get at Simple Programmer to come. All I ask is that everyone be civil during the discussion. So literally, He asked for a civil discussion about the post with her, to record it and to post it. Seems reasonable to me. Here's her response. Now, I am not going to read this response verbatim, but I am going to show it on the screen. At CMAX. F you. F civility. We are not friends. I do not want or need to talk to you about bleep. You're just realizing that your little video had the opposite effect that you'd planned. So to be clear, F you. Hashtag causes scene, blah blah blah. Now, I took a look at her Twitter. I'm not even going to show it on the screen because this is the typical post of her on Twitter. So, and then she reposted and said, I'll just leave this right here. Now, here's the Linux Foundation's response. At Nebris, Sarah May, at Kim Creighton 1. Hi all, we have reviewed social and videos and determined that the event code of conduct was violated and his registration to the event has been revoked. Our events should and will be a safe space. Safe space. Has anyone really been in the Linux community? We're far from a safe space, but really here we are at cancel culture and safe spaces. Interesting. Now, just to be clear, Charles Wood was canceled for making a post on his own personal Twitter on his own time when he wasn't representing the Linux Foundation at all because one person complained publicly on Twitter. Now, this isn't to express my own personal views. I don't care what hat he was wearing. He could have been wearing a Bernie Sanders hat, a Tulsi Gabbard hat, Tim Ryan hat, or any other hat of any other candidate. Whether Democrat, Independent, Third Party, Republican, I don't care what hat he was wearing. This is extremely stupid. When he wasn't even hurting anybody. And he didn't even tag the event in his post. He wasn't wearing any Linux Foundation gear. Nobody would have tied him to the event until she did. So apparently he was disinvited for violating the event code of conduct. Well, let's take a look at this code of conduct for context. This is straight out of the Linux Foundation's website. I will link this in the description. And we're going to scroll down to unacceptable behavior and read it. Harassment will not be tolerated in any form, including, but not limited to, harassment based on gender, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, age, religion, or any other status protected by laws in which the conference or program is being held. Harassment includes the use of abusive, offensive, or degrading language, intimidation, stalking, harassing photography or recording, inappropriate physical contact, sexual imagery and unwelcome sexual advances or requests for sexual favors. Any report of harassment at any of our events will be addressed immediately. Participants asked to stop any harassing behavior are expected to comply immediately. Anyone who witnesses or is subjected to unacceptable behavior should notify a conference organizer at once. Fair enough. Exhibitors should not use any sexualized images, activities, etc. I'm going to read the last paragraph. Individuals who participate or plan to participate in Lennox Foundation events should conduct themselves at all times in a manner that comports with both the letter and the spirit of this policy, prohibiting harassment and abusive behavior, whether before, during, or after the event. This includes statements made in social media postings, online publications, text messages, and all other forms of electronic communication. Well, let's just go back right here to this Twitter post right here. F you, F civility, etc. And let's take a look at this. So it includes the use of abusive, offensive, or degrading language. Again, F you, F civility. And it seems how he didn't tag her in this post. And apparently, he doesn't know her. I would assume he might. And he didn't tag her in the post, etc. I would say she is violating this policy based off of what I read here. Okay, I have the open letter to the Lennox Foundation right here, written by Robert Martin, down there at Clean Code. And of course it's addressed to the Lennox Foundation, etc. And here's his response to the Lennox Foundation. I'm not going to read the whole letter, it's rather long. However, I do suggest that you read it. I will link it in the description. I'm going to start right here. The timeline of events, as far as I can determine them, is as follows. The Lennox Foundation received a public tweet sent to the Kubecon Twitter address. That tweet recommended that Kubecon discontinue their association with Charles Max Wood. The reason given in this complaint were his request for an open and civil phone call and a picture of Mr. Wood wearing a MAGA hat. That sounds pretty accurate to me. The Lennox Foundation publicly replied from the Lennox Foundation's Twitter account as follows, and it states the tweet. First, let me say that I find it highly problematic that the complaint and the decision were public. Indeed, I am surprised that the Lennox Foundation would accept a publicly submitted Code of Conduct complaint. I am much more than surprised that the Lennox Foundation ever would consider publicly responding to such a complaint. Indeed, it seems to me that the public complaint, and perhaps even the public response by the Lennox Foundation, could be seen as public harassment, which is explicitly prohibited by the Lennox Foundation's Code of Conduct. It seems to me that the Code of Conduct complaints made in public must be immediately rejected and viewed as Code of Conduct violation in and of themselves. Code of Conduct complaints should be submitted in private and remain private and confidential in order to prevent their use as a means of harassment. It also seems to me that while the process of accepting, reviewing, and adjudicating such complaints should be public, the proceedings and decision of each individual case should remain private and confidential in order to protect the parties from harm. Making them a public showcase is simply horrible. He goes on saying he reviewed the videos, etc. And he goes on to ask a few questions. I'm going to only read a couple of them. Why was the initial complaint accepted and acknowledged in public? It was clearly political in nature and very clearly intended to cause harm to Mr. Wood. Alright. Is it Lennox Foundation policy to accept complaints that in and of themselves violate the Lennox Foundation's Code of Conduct? Why was the Code of Conduct determination announced publicly? despite the harm it would obviously cause to Mr. Wood. Does the Lennox Foundation have a documented process by which code of conduct complaints are to be submitted, reviewed, and adjudicated? And does the Lennox Foundation have a code of conduct for how it conducts itself? And I mean, those are all very, very good questions. I only read a few of them. Now, he goes on to state that this situation went off the rails and that the Lennox Foundation owes Mr. Wood an apology, which I would agree with. They definitely owe him an apology for the way this was handled, for the way that they responded, and for the public harm that they caused Mr. Wood. There was no excuse for that. I think this quote-unquote complaint should have been ignored. And literally, if she didn't like Mr. Woods, didn't like his attire, and didn't like the fact that Mr. Wood was attending Kubecon, then she had the right not to attend that event. It's not the Lennox Foundation's responsibility to create safe spaces for everybody. That's an impossible task. You can't please everybody, and nor should you try. I'm not one of these safe spaces that needs a safe space for everything. And literally, this is not the way to handle things. And like I said, this is not about my political views. They could have been wearing any hat, whether it be a MAGA hat or a Bernie Sanders hat, etc. I don't care. This type of political BS doesn't belong in a Lennox community event. This type of thing is cancer to the Lennox Foundation, and they should have just separated themselves, ignored the comment, and continued business as usual. And that's my thoughts on that. If you like this video, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Also, consider following me on my social media links below. And if you really liked it, check out these videos that are listed on your screen. Have a nice day, and thank you for watching The Penguin Revolution.